My story begins in a dream. My vision was foggy, like a haze had rolled over my eyes. I could hear explosions, buildings crumbling, screams. Screams that still haunt me to this day. Then I heard someone call out. I turned to see a boy waving for me to follow. Like I was in a trance, I ran after the boy. Suddenly there was a loud flapping sound, like the wing beat of a massive bird landing. I heard one name. Michael. Then the piercing sound of metal on flesh. I felt this extreme panic as the boy I was following fell to the ground, followed by an intense, cold anger. Wake up! I woke up on a soft bed, the smell of cinnamon filling my nose. A soft, slender hand was on my shoulder. I looked to see an unfamiliar woman leaning over the bed, medium-length brown hair falling off her shoulder. I'm sorry to wake you, she said, but you were having a nightmare. I looked around to see an unfamiliar room. My heart was racing. How are you feeling? Strangely enough, the woman's voice was calming. I could feel my heart rate decreasing as she spoke. I started to sit up, but a wave of pain washed over my chest. Don't move! The woman gently forced me back down. You were in a terrible accident. You've been asleep for days now. Days? Yes. A deep voice pulled my attention to the door leading out of the room. A strongly built man strode in and approached with a stoic expression. Do you remember who you are, or where you came from? Dear. The woman was about to stop him, but he held his hand out. What can you remember? He asked again, this time slightly more forcefully. There was a wave of irritation that washed over me for just a moment. He was being so aggressive over such a simple question. But as I was about to snap back at him, I realized. I don't know. I held the side of my head as it throbbed. I don't even remember my name. It was like my mind was fighting against my will to remember anything. The only thing I could make surface were screams of agony. Stop. Suddenly a large hand covered my eyes. The lack of light and the protective feeling caused my body to relax, and the pain to subside. So it's true. The man gave me another neutral look. The accident you were in has taken the lives of your parents, and has left you without your memories. We all sat in silence for a moment. There was a ringing in my ears from the overwhelming feelings that had surfaced. Then it had settled. The man's suddenly soft tone ripped me from the void and caused the ringing to stop. We will adopt you into our family. For a moment I was shocked. Me? You want to adopt me? Yes, the woman nodded. We would love to have you in our family. We've always wanted a son, too, the man confirmed. He rested his hand on my shoulder. Now I leave you with your new name. A name fitting for a night like tonight, blanketed in a gentle snow. Rest well, Kazuyuki. The sudden change in atmosphere caused me to become exhausted. I was comfortable. Not long after, I fell asleep in the soft bed. Over the next few weeks, my new parents taught me everything I needed to know. They told me about the community we live in, which was very tight-knit and somewhat on the religious side, although my parents were less so. My new mom also homeschooled me so I would become comfortable enough to go to a public school. Not long after was my first day. When I arrived, a teacher was there to warmly welcome me. She walked me to my class while making small talk. My classmates were even more welcoming. I wondered if they were informed of my situation, and I questioned their sincerity at first. But over time, that feeling disappeared because I was having fun with them. I was making friends. We got along very well and played various games each day. But one day, something changed. I woke up like any other day and greeted my mom. She greeted me in kind like she had since I started living there. but she was still focused on cooking. I walked to the table to wait for breakfast. After a bit, Mom walked in, but when she saw me, she gasped loudly and dropped the pan of omelets. I quickly picked up the pan and set it on the table. As I turned around to ask Mom what was wrong, she appeared at eye level with me and grabbed my face softly. "What happened to your eye?" she said frantically. I was confused until she took me to a mirror. What I saw gave me chills. The sclera of my right eye was pitch black, the iris was golden, and the pupil was in the shape of a Greek cross. I had no idea what could have caused this, and neither did Mom. She immediately decided to pull me out of school and rush me to the clinic. Dad met us there too. After running all the tests they could, the doctor found nothing wrong, so they sent me home while more thorough tests were sent off. In the meantime, my parents decided I should stay home, so my schoolwork was brought to me each day, and I stayed home for a total of 7 days. After the 7th day, my eye went back to normal, and my parents decided it would be best for me to return to school so I wouldn't fall behind socially. Unfortunately, that was already the case. On the day I went back to school, the teacher that always greeted me so warmly wasn't there. I chalked it up to them not knowing I was going back that day, but as I walked to the classroom, I could tell something was wrong. I was getting weird looks from students and teachers alike. Disgust, fear, resentment. It turns out the doctor that saw me had loose lips. He told some people about my eye, and since the community is so close, it wasn't long before all the faculty in the school knew, as well as the parents of the students. No one would talk to me. I was left completely alone. This continued for months. The days I used to spend playing with the kids I used to call my friends were now spent alone, with books and handheld games. One day a new kid transferred into my class. He was from out of town. He seemed like a nice guy. He warmly introduced himself, and the class was given a moment to get to know him. I didn't partake in the meet and greet. I just sat at my desk and doodled. It's not that I didn't want to go talk to him, but it wasn't long after he was surrounded by the class that I could tell they were telling him about me. Each time he would look my way, one of the kids would not so secretly tell him to stay away. So I went about my morning as usual. I continued my doodle of Sonic the Hedgehog, which I learned how to draw roughly. As I doodled, the teacher came in to take roll. The class returned to their seats except for the new kid. The teacher called out the kids' names one by one, and they all responded with "here." But as usual, when the teacher got to me, she simply looked in my direction to confirm I was there, and moved on. The teacher then introduced the new kid, Hadwin Varon, to the class. Then the teacher assigned Hadwin to a seat, right behind me. As Hadwin passed me, he glanced down. I ignored what I assumed was a look of disgust or resentment. But, is that Sonic? I looked up to see Hadwin bent over my desk, looking at my doodle with a smile on his face. I was really confused at first, but somehow I was able to respond. "Yeah? Hadwin?" the teacher called out. "Please have a seat so we can get the day started." The teacher gave Hadwin a stern look of warning, which caused him to shrink a bit. He looked back at me, and I couldn't hide my look of disappointment. I lowered my head as Hadwin walked to his seat. Later that day, we were outside for recess. It was close to summer now, so all the kids were out playing various games together. But I sat in the shade of the school wall and drew. About halfway through recess, though, I heard someone approach. I tensed. I was used to kids coming up to me to chastise me, to pick fun for seemingly no reason. But even though I'm used to it now, it still hurt. "Hey!" I ignored the kid at first, as I usually do. If I did, they would get bored and leave sooner. "What's your name?" I realized this voice didn't know me. Everyone in the school knew my name, for the wrong reasons. Curiosity won over, and I dared to look up at the person. And I saw Hadwin. I just stared at him for a moment. He tilted his head and spoke again. The teacher didn't call out your name during roll. So what is it? For a moment I froze, but I could see in this kid's eyes that he was being genuine. I couldn't sense even a hint of fear or resentment from him like I could the others. My name is Kazuyuki, I said softly. Kazuyuki, huh? Hadwin approached and slid down next to me. What a weird name. I braced for the heckling. Have you played Sonic Adventure 2? Yeah, I said skeptically. Nice. He nodded in approval. That was it. For the next 6 months, Hadwin and I were inseparable. We shared so many interests, all the way down to our interest in niche games. Over time, my family grew close with his mom. They basically became best friends too. Because of her work, Hadwin's mom traveled a lot, so Hadwin would regularly stay at my house while she was away. Because of that, we basically became brothers. We started getting into everything together. My dad even got us into card games by taking us to game shops almost every time he came over. Thanks to that, I discovered my love for card games. Hadwin kept me up to date on the latest video games, and Dad was interested in them too, so Dad would often watch us play. In this time, my mood improved dramatically. I was enjoying life again. But around the start of fall that year, my world would crumble. The morning went on like any other morning. Hadwin was waiting for me outside of school when I arrived, and we walked in together. Hadwin said he wanted to try a card game that I was getting into, so we planned to ask Dad to take us to the card shop so I could help him buy a new deck. But about halfway through the day, something changed. In the middle of the teacher's lecture, she zeroed in on me. She gave me a death glare like she wanted to burn me alive. "What's wrong with you?" she asked me forcefully. A wave of frustration washed over me as I was doing nothing besides taking notes. "What are you talking about? I'm fine." "No, you're not." She marched straight to me, not even bothering to hide her anger. "You're coming with me, boy." She grabbed my arm and dragged me out of the classroom. I could faintly hear Hadwin shouting in protest. The principal called my parents and demanded that I be removed. While I waited for Mom, the principal stared at me with complete contempt. Finally, he spoke. "What are you?" he asked coldly. "I'm just a boy," I said quickly. For some reason, it felt like someone was talking for me. "A normal boy does not have his eye change so suddenly," the principal shot. My eye? I was confused, but then I realized. I looked over to the window, seeing my reflection. I could see enough to know that my right eye looked the same as it did about 6 months ago. "You are a tainted child." "Is he now?" I jumped to see my mom standing in the doorway with her arms crossed. Her face was beet red. "How dare you call out a child with a rare condition?" Mom motioned for me to follow. As I got up, my mom glared at the principal. "I will be reporting this discrimination." This statement got the principal to shrink in his chair as Mom escorted me out of the building. We were quiet for most of the drive home, aside from my mother reassuring me that there was nothing wrong with me and that I should ignore what other people think. But her words weren't sinking in. I was in a trance all the way until we got home. When we got there, I locked myself in my room. I wouldn't answer for Mom, who never left the door. Not for Dad, who left work early to try to talk to me. I just laid in bed with my face in my pillow, wondering if this would be my life. "Kazu?" I heard a voice that I didn't want to hear, from a person I didn't want to see. "Go away, Hadwin," I said. "Open the door, Kazuyuki," Hadwin demanded. "No," I shouted. "Just leave me alone." After a few seconds of silence, I could hear them talking outside. Then there was a crash. I looked up to see Dad with his foot retracting, and Hadwin with the shoulder down like a football player. "What are you doing?" I shouted as I buried my head into my pillow. "Getting him to you." Dad didn't stop Hadwin as he approached. "Let me see you." "No," I responded coldly. Show me, Hadwin shot back. I could immediately tell I wasn't going to convince him to leave, so I slowly turned my head so he could see my right eye. Hadwin stared at me for a moment while examining what he saw. Then he looked towards the broken door of my room. Mom? Suddenly, Hadwin's mom walked into my room. Before I even had the chance to hide my face, she spoke. Ah, I see. She approached my bed and examined my eye, like she wasn't bothered at all. Yes, we should be able to do something about this. Something... Mom works with a big beauty company, Hadwin explained. Cosmetics, actually, Hadwin's mom corrected. There's a slight difference. My company works to create products to help people who have uniqueness that cause them issues due to the less than accepting public. She smiled warmly at me. We can help you with that condition of yours. I looked at her in complete shock, rising off of the bed. Over the next week, Hadwin's mom helped me get a special contact lens that matched my eyes perfectly when they were normal. Mom and Dad also put up a formal complaint with the Board of Education. Both my teacher and the principal were dismissed as a result, replaced by people that were more in tune with my condition, which had best been diagnosed as a condition similar to heterochromia, which causes the eye to rapidly and randomly change color. We also figured out a pattern to my eye change. It happened twice a year, and it always started 3 days before an equinox, extending all the way until the day of and 3 days after. But thanks to the contact, and the fact that no one else really saw what happened to my eye that day, except for my former teacher, my reputation slowly faded away into memory. Years passed, and my life went on without incident. Hadwin and I moved out of state for college. I opted to take online courses just in case I forgot to put my contact in, which happened more often than not. But thankfully, Hadwin kept a spare on him just in case. We were invited to our high school reunion. Because Hadwin and I moved, we had to book a hotel and fly out. It was nice to be home and see the parents again, as it was hard for us to make time to visit, and it was hard for them to come to us. But I was extremely nervous. Would my former classmates somehow remember the events of the past? But that fear was quickly washed away. See, Hadwin was very good at pulling me out of my shell, and he did this a lot during high school. Because of that, I had a small group of people that I would call acquaintances. This group actually met us at our hotel and drove us to the reunion. On the way there, everyone made small talk, even to me. The group had somehow learned Hadwin's ways, and they were doing a good job of getting me to talk in a good way. The reunion went off without a hitch. Most of my classmates were welcoming to me. It seemed like all of them grew out of the upbringing of their families that were not very accepting of uniqueness. They either seemed to completely forget about my issue or didn't care. All of them were so nice and treated me like just another human, all except for 3 guys. I recognized them as grade school classmates. They had been basically staring at me the entire night. I tried to ignore them, but their gaze was unnerving. Luckily, there was a steady stream of people that kept my mind distracted for the most part. We were all having a great time, getting caught up and sharing in our successes, offering advice to the areas we were struggling. There was alcohol served at the reunion, but I decided to restrain myself for some reason. Hadwin had a fair share, but not enough to make him belligerently inebriated. We had a great time all the way until it was time for everyone to leave. Hadwin and I decided we would walk back to the hotel, since the weather was nice, and it wasn't that far from where the reunion was. For some reason, we decided to take a shortcut through an alleyway that would save us about a block of travel. But as we were about to walk out of the alleyway, 3 shadows came into view. Hadwin and I were distracted in conversation, so we just stopped to let them pass. But then we noticed that they had also stopped. We looked to see the same 3 people that had been giving me the cold stares at the reunion. "What do we have here?" one said. "You seem to be getting along well with everyone now, outcast." Another brought up an old nickname that I had long forgotten. That already got me irritated. "Come on, guys." Hadwin stepped forward as he knew I was quick to anger. "We're all adults here. Why can't we just get along or move on?" "I just want to get a good look at you now, outcast." The third guy started to walk towards us, with the other two close behind. Hadwin and I backed up into the alleyway. Wanted to see if the others had gone blind, or if they just forgot what a monster you are. "He's not a monster!" Hadwin shouted. "He has a condition, dude. It's nothing abnormal." "A condition doesn't cause someone's eye to go black and their pupils to turn into a cross," the dude shot back. I could almost smell the alcohol on their breath. "A change like that stems from evil. Corruption." "You don't know what you're talking about," Hadwin shot back. "I know exactly what I'm talking about." The dude got close. "I can tell you're not normal. And you'll never be normal." "That's enough!" Hadwin stepped between me and the dude, but he responded by winding back quickly and punching Hadwin in the stomach. Hard. Hadwin, not expecting the hit at all, was knocked back a few steps before crumpling to the ground, hunched over on his hands and knees. "Hadwin!" I basically skidded on my knees to him. He was coughing badly. "This is what happens when you let others fight your battles," the dude said. "This is what happens when you hang out with the corrupt." "He's not..." Hadwin was cut off by a round of violent coughing. Only this time, he coughed up blood. Something snapped. I could almost hear it. Just seeing my best friend hurt. I got to one knee as an overwhelming feeling washed over me, the ringing in my ears persisting as a cold wind suddenly swept through the alleyway. "What's going on?" one of the men asked, voice rising in panic. All I could think was that someone had hurt my friend. It felt like something had unlocked inside of me. I felt a cold spreading through my body, starting from my heart. The day was March 20th, 2020, the spring equinox. I turned to look at the three men still on one knee. My eye had turned like it always did. A black halo slowly appeared above my head, along with two horns that sprouted from my forehead. Finally, a pair of black wings appeared on my back. "Monster!" the man that punched Hadwin yelled. My mind was cloudy, foggy. I was operating on instinct as I reached out and wrapped my hand around a pillar of ice that was appearing. All I felt, all I knew, was an overwhelming urge to... All of my thoughts were quickly brought to a halt by Hadwin grabbing my ankle just before I was going to lunge at the one that hurt him, like he was grounding me back into reality. This gave the group just enough time to turn and run. I felt the hostility and anger drain as the group ran, the hurried footsteps echoing on the sides of the building. But those feelings were replaced by waves of panic. "Come on!" Suddenly a coat was thrown over me, with the hood quickly being drawn over my head, or at least the best that it could with the horns and halo. "Where's your contact?" Hadwin asked forcefully. I must have forgotten to put it in," I mumbled, slowly coming back to reality. "Ugh!" Hadwin wrapped his arm around me to try to keep the wings on my back as unnoticeable as possible behind the long blue coat. "If anyone asks, we're coming from a costume party. A very fancy costume party." Hadwin quickly led me down the alleyway, and we made our way to the hotel. We only got sideways glances, mainly from people that got a good look at my face, but we were able to get to our room without any incident. We sat on our beds, not sure what to do. For a moment, we sat in silence. I tried to break that silence. "So, I'm sure you have an explanation, but I need to ask one thing first." I raised my head to see Hadwin giving me a neutral face. It reminded me of the look Dad gave me when I first woke up in what became my bed. "Did you know?" Did I? Of all the things to ask. Of course I didn't know. You know I would have said something if I knew I was like this. I mean... Hadwin gave me a long look. "What even are you?" That question cut deep, but it also got me thinking. And then I realized. I remember. I held my head as it started to throb with all the new information. I closed my eyes so I could remember clearly. History is written by the victors of wars past, and my people were no exception. The day before I woke up in my parents' house was a big day for me. I was born in Babylon in the year 539 BC. The people of Babylon were unique. Babylonians were pure of heart, free from even the slightest of sin that humans are normally plagued with. Because of this, heaven acknowledged the Babylonian spirits and permitted them to train directly under venerated archangels, and eventually become an archangel themselves. I went through that same training at the age of 12, along with my childhood friend, Zadkiel. We completed our training with above standard results, and were given the powers that heaven bestowed upon the Babylonians that proved themselves. Along with the powers of an archangel, the Babylonians also gained elemental abilities based on how they reacted to the powers. But there was a darkness stirring in Babylon, because even though the Babylonians were born free of sin, they were still human. On the day Zadkiel and I were to complete our training and ascend, an archangel appeared to the Babylonians. The angel was unhappy that we followed a ruler that was unseen. They were curious and wanted to at least gaze upon the one we all revered. And the Babylonians, even through their pure hearts, shared in this curiosity. So this angel convinced the Babylonians to revolt, simply to gaze upon the one who holds the stars. The next day, Zadkiel and I ascended, and we were granted our powers. At the same time, war broke out in Babylon. The support the angel promised the Babylonians never came. It was all a ruse by the angel to allow them and them alone to breach the inner halls of heaven. And so, Babylon was raised by heaven, led by the venerated archangels that once trained them. Zadkiel and I, being the youngest and the newest ascended Babylonians, and having nothing to do with the plot, decided to flee. But as we were about to leave the doomed city, we were stopped by Michael and Gabriel themselves. Ah, Michael sighed. The corrupt are trying to flee. I had such high hopes for these two. Gabriel, the one that trained us, gave me in particular a disgusted look. Please, Master, Zadkiel begged. We want no part of this. We just want to live and serve. I beg of you, Master, please let us return with you, I added. We had no interest in seeing our ruler. If only we could believe the words of humans, Michael said slowly. The Babylonians were promising, but in the end, they were just a failed experiment. Gabriel, my master. Experiment? Zadkiel shouted. That's all we were? Just an experiment? We devoted ourselves to you and the Lord. There was a flash of brilliant yellow, and the sound of Zadkiel grunting. I looked over to see Michael, with his holy sword ran through Zadkiel's chest. Master. Zadkiel groaned as Michael removed his sword, Zadkiel falling to the ground. Zadkiel! I ran to him, skidding on the ground as I got to him. I pushed my hand under Zadkiel's head to raise it. Zadkiel. Gods. Zadkiel coughed violently. Then his body grew limp in my arms. I let out a scream of rage as my body turned ice cold. Excruciating pain emanated from my forehead as the horns grew. My holy wings and halo darkened to black. Michael! I turned to face my former master. Disgusting, Michael scoffed. But this is what we get when we allow humans to... I didn't allow him to finish. I flexed my newly acquired wings and shot towards Michael, while reaching for a scythe made of pure ice that appeared in my hand. But in the end, our abilities were worlds apart. There was another flash of yellow and I could feel my scythe break in two, followed by a warm feeling on my stomach. I looked down to see a sword extending out from me. You are nothing but corrupt trash, Michael said unenthusiastically. An archangel that has committed the deadly sin of wrath. You are tainted, and you are only just worthy to die by my blade. I'll kill you. I grabbed the sword in my body, my hand burning as I touched it. Michael. Michael simply gave me a blank expression as he retracted his sword, causing me to fall to my back. Michael and Gabriel approached us. This is the end of Babylon. This city will be forever known as a city of heretics, Michael proclaimed. Your buildings will burn, and your people will be forgotten. Michael raised his sword over me. Repent to whomever you wish, for you are bound for oblivion. Michael twitched as he was about to drive his sword down on me, but he stopped. Then he held the side of his head and closed his eyes. Someone has breached the inner sanctum, Gabriel said. Michael sighed. This was a distraction. He opened his eyes and looked down at me, pondering for a moment. Then he threw his sword as it vanished into thin air. You both will die soon enough. Suffering is deserving of those like you. I groaned as my body moved for me. I tried to get up as my hand reached for another pillar of ice, but it gave up and went limp. Michael and Gabriel didn't give us a second look as they flexed their wings and floated into the air. There I lay, unable to move with waves of pain coming from my stomach. I could only feel the anger of being betrayed by my people for falling for such a simple ruse, and also by my master for refusing to listen to us. Cause. Suddenly a hand appeared on my shoulder. My body wanted to react, but it couldn't. I could tell by the voice that it was Zadkiel. You must live. Zadkiel. Listen. Zadkiel's voice was labored. You are the only one that can survive. Live on so that our people can live on. Live your life to the fullest. This is my final request. Zadkiel's hand started to glow a golden yellow, and the pain in my stomach started to subside. I immediately realized what he was doing. Zadkiel, I'm not leaving you, I said with the strength that was slowly returning. I'm not leaving you to die alone. I was able to turn my head to see Zadkiel's face at peace. Stubborn as ever, he said with a pained smile. But you aren't winning this argument, my friend. A yellow glow started to envelop my vision. Farewell, Kazael. My body felt light as Zadkiel used his ability over light and time to heal my wounds and send me forward in time. And that's it. I sighed as I opened my eyes again. Hadwin and I sat in silence. So you're an archangel who's been corrupted by wrath, I said coldly. A monster, just like they said. You're not! Hadwin shot to his feet. Even with all that, you're still a kind and caring person. You're the most genuine person I know. Even now, you aren't acting any different. I stared at Hadwin in shock. I could tell he meant every word. I don't care where you've come from. Hadwin held his hand out. You're here now, and you're my best friend. I stared at Hadwin's hand in shock, but just like in the alleyway, and when I was trying to defend Zadkiel, my instincts took over, and I took Hadwin's hand. Over time, my mental state deteriorated. I revealed what I was to my parents, expecting them to disown me on the spot. But come to find out, Zadkiel left one final message. He told my parents everything, and begged them to shield me from the truth, till the end of my days if possible. I was upset at first, but then I realized that even though they knew who I was, they still willingly accepted me into their family. They'd been protecting me from so much, even if the public didn't actually know what I was. But that made me feel even worse. Now that I had my memories back, how could I go back to a normal life? I'd never be able to fully fit into society. I'm basically a ticking time bomb of rage. Slowly, I began to regress into myself. Out of a sense of protection for the public, I even moved to a small house in the mountains. One day, Hadwin came to me, with way more excitement than what was needed. He wanted to show me this new website he found. He said it was full of people who streamed themselves playing games or doing other things. So we sat together and browsed this new to us website called twitch.tv. We ended up spending the whole day finding streamers that we liked, and eventually, I found this particular group of streamers. They were all vastly unique and had their own unique quirks. A lord of the land and his pink cat girl, a slime lord, a zombie queen, even fire elementals. There were so many more than I could ever explain. But they had one thing in common. Their communities were always so open and kind. No matter what they looked like or their past, they still found like-minded people to get along with. As I watched these people, I started to wonder, could I do that too? So, after months of preparation and psyching myself up, I put on my headset, booted up Sakuna of Rice and Ruin, and hit go live for the first time.